Mick Cronin has assembled his best offensive team at UCLA, and they won't be too bad defensively as well.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxheimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's your team every day, and, thanks for tuning in. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Where we get started today is talking about Mick Cronin's team. He has done an absolute fantastic job. Absolutely fantastic when it comes to assembling this team. All right. Avengers assemble. Well, they're avenging last year's terrible team, right? I mean, they're not terrible, but they're under 500. That's below his standards. In his mind, that's a terrible team. And for UCLA standards, we should make sure that is the case going forward with Mick Cronin as the coach. So what did Mick Cronin do? He addressed the weakness. Last year, the weakness was, yes, they had some decent defensive metrics, and yes, they can clean up things on the defensive side, but large in part, it was the inability to find consistent scoring. Well, what did UCLA do? I've talked about it. We're going to talk about it again. It's the fact that Cronin went out and found the elite shooting, the mid-range, the guys who can create their own shot, people who can finish at the rim, and this is going to be the best scoring, most efficient team Cronin has arguably had at UCLA. Let's get down to the numbers. What is UCLA trying to improve upon from last year's team where it was just, at moments, at times last year, a little unfortunate and sometimes pathetic with how poorly they shot the ball for a young team that was still learning the Mick Cronin system on defense. Well, last year, UCLA, they just didn't do too many things right on offense. The Bruins averaged 66 points per game, 41% from the floor. So the opposition scored nearly the same amount of points as the Bruins. They shot better than UCLA from the floor. The Bruins only made 5.5 threes per game. And overall, UCLA only shot 33% from the floor from downtown. That was, at one point, one of the worst numbers UCLA had in their program's history before some lights-out shooting from Stefanovic, from Dylan Andrews at the end of the year that picked up that number and moved it away from god-awful territory in UCLA's history of three-point shooting. So don't let that number fool you. The Bruins struggled with it consistency-wise all season long. So what does Mick Cronin do? Mick Cronin goes and gets Dominic Harris. Dominic Harris, the last of all the transfers to check into school after transferring from LMU, still has another year of eligibility, comes in, can score 15 a game. He was the third best three-point shooter in the country percentage-wise, over 44%, led the WCC. And when listing the best three-point shooters in the country, I forget where it was exactly, but Dominic Harris, was listed as a top 15, could arguably a top 10 three-point shooter in the country. If the numbers didn't back it up, the eye test does, and so does the national media as well. So UCLA went out and just casually found somebody in their backyard, brought him back to power conference play, and he can shoot the lights out. And I'm not convinced just yet that Harris will even be starting this year. That's how deep this roster is. Okay, you bring in Harris from the portal. That guy is meant to shoot. The idea of what UCLA is trying to do, just repeat that team from 2 years ago. You got your Dave Singleton 2.0. All right. So what UCLA is trying to do, they got an elite shooter on a team that did not have one last year. Stefanovic got red hot last year. He is going to be probably forced into reserve role. Less shots, probably more high-quality looks. You expect his numbers to get better after another year at UCLA, comfortable offseason, and he'll be one of a few leaders on this team, not just the vocal leader. So I expect Stefanovic's numbers to improve at UCLA. They've slowly, gradually at times improved over his career from Utah to now UCLA for a year. Dylan Andrews showcased a three-point stroke that was lethal in the Pac-12 opening round game against Oregon State. If he can continue to do that, I'm not expecting him to shoot lights out from downtown like 50 or 40%. But if he's hovering at well above a 35% clip, not needing to take all those three-point shots when it's smooth and he gets off the dribble, Dylan Andrews was a weapon from downtown. and he significantly improved from his true freshman season to then his sophomore season, and now his junior year. The Dylan Andrews, I expect, is a breakout candidate in the Big Ten and across national leaderboards, whether it's assist to turnover ratio, maybe it's leading the team in scoring like he did last year. I'm expecting Dylan Andrews to make another leap. All right. So what else are we expecting? Well, you bring in Sky Clark. The dude put up numbers. His best three-point shooting numbers came in a game against NC State in the ACC tournament, an NC State team that ended up making the Final Four. And Sky Clark put up big numbers as pretty much the only weapon Louisville had on a pretty terrible Cardinal team last year. That is what UCLA has coming in. Oh, let's not forget double-digit bucket getter in Tyler Bilodeau, who UCLA faced off against in the Pac-12 tournament last season. Mick Cronin went to go get him, and they found a way to get somebody who can hit from deep, score in bunches, and also finish at the rim. UCLA was one of the worst teams at finishing in the paint at the rim, even with the Dembona, wasn't the most gifted and polished offensively, so you get Bilodeau who can finish at the rim. You've got a rim rocker in William Kyle III who comes in with, I believe, the mantra, the mentality, the rim is meant to be destroyed. Layups are not his mantra. All right? High-quality finishes, the UCLA Bruins could find somebody, like they did, who is solid defensively, who can go score in bunches in the paint if need be. If there's a mismatch, an athletic mismatch, they can feed the paint. All right, let's not forget they got a 7'2", 7'3" unicorn coming out the bench. If Adai at all improves, then you've got, wait a minute, let's forget, Eric Daly Jr., the Swiss Army knife, who can go play multiple positions, can play small ball 5, shoot it above 30% from 3, and find a way to score in multiple ways. A left-handed shooter who could have been a starter but thrived off the bench at Oklahoma State, and I expect him to be utilized and thriving in a similar role at UCLA. Eric Daly Jr., the former Cowboy turned Bruin, who can guard multiple spots. We'll talk about that in a moment. All right, what are we getting more of? We're going to get more, Trent Perry, possibly, as he fights his way. Eric Franey, 2 freshmen coming in who are going to compete. I saw Perry, you watch those Rico's runs highlights. They won against some former UCLA talent, some pro talent. Those guys look good shooting the basketball and controlling the pace against some quality basketball players. What we're not going to get a bunch of jacked up threes from Sebastian Mack. All right? We're not going to get the high percentage looks from 3 or the high volume of looks from 3 that Mack had that had him under 30%. So I expect UCLA to be a much better three-point shooting team. How does this compare to UCLA's team from a couple of years ago, where this was their best shooting team, their best scoring team in Mick Cronin? The year before the Pac-12 winning team, the year after the Final Four team, where they brought a lot of people back. They fell just short to the eventual national runners-up in North Carolina. UCLA as a team averaged 75 points per game. The Bruins shot 45% from the field, and they shot 35% from 3. What did they have on that team that made them so dynamic? Well, does the name Johnny Juzang ring a bell? Of course it does. For all modern, very recent UCLA fans, you had Juzang, you had Jaime Hawkins Jr., you had Jules Bernard and Tiger Campbell, who all filtered in as 4 double-digit scorers. This year, as much as there's a bulk of scoring options, many ways Mick Cronin could go. I could see somewhere between 5 to 6 potential double-digit scoring options, more likely that we see 5. Who's going to be the Johnny Juzang? Well, at the moment, I'm going to go with the leading scorer who's going to have the ball in his hands in Dylan Andrews, who can slash, hit that mid-range jumper, get to the cup, get fouled a little bit more often, and has shown an improved three-point stroke as your leader in the clubhouse to potentially lead the team in scoring, if not one of 2 or 3 offensive categories in the upcoming season. Okay, depending on the role how Dominic Harris plays, he could be a double-digit role scorer like Dave Singleton was, who floated between 9 points to 10 points per game, over 45% from 3, close to 40% with Singleton. That's the role that Dominic Harris can play. I'm thinking, after my initial assessment of Max starting over the months, thinking about Sky Clark, one of those guys are going to start, whoever it is, and I'm expecting it now to be Clark, and he'll come in and get buckets. And if it's not him, expect a free-flowing freshman like a Perry or Freeney to earn his spot, and whoever's starting is probably going to be a guy that averages double figures. And wait a minute, who have I not talked about this far into the podcast? Arguably the most important transfer, the highest ranked transfer, Kobe Johnson, who we'll touch on more in the next segment, but he is Jaylen Clark 2.0, according to Mick Cronin. The defensive intangibles are there. Can he improve his three-point stroke? Clark, in his last year at UCLA, was somebody who shot over 30% from three, slashed and cut to the hole, made some buckets. On this team 2 years ago, wasn't really a scoring option, was still developing into his own. Johnson has been a 4-year player. He won't be asked to do as much offensively as he was at USC. And if he can get those numbers a little higher, then I think UCLA, with more efficient shots from Johnson, better quality looks or less looks from Sebastian Mack, who is supposedly healthier after a bit of a toe injury last year, then less looks for Stefanovic and Bulk. You're going to have more high-quality options and a quicker hook for Cronin to find who has the hotter hands on his team offensively. I think this team is capable of scoring closer to 80 points, 77, 78, and pushing that 75-point-per-game number in the Mick Cronin era and blowing past it. I think they can beat that 35% three-point percentage. I think they got what it takes to hit volume threes at a high clip and be one of the better offensive teams, not only in Mick Cronin's tenure, but in the Big Ten. All right. That is spectacular. But will they lose it on the defensive end? I don't think so, which is what we're going to talk about next on Locked On UCLA. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, but right now we have something a little different for you. From now until September 22nd, so you're running out of time, but until September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game, and all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, which you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. It's that time of season. The fall season's coming. That means there's more concert events, comedy events, sporting events. Yeah, UCLA fans, you're going to want to get your tickets to still get to go to the Rose Bowl. Go on the road to these amazing Big Ten venues. Get those tickets to see the Mick Cronin Bruins in action. All right, so go to Game Time. That's your place to go to get your tickets. What about Game Time? Well, you can go check out the panoramic views. All right, you can go see all around it. And then there's Game Time Picks, where curation makes it easier to save more on the sports, more on concerts, comedy, theater tickets. All right, with all-in pricing, you toggle it on. You know exactly what you're going to pay right away. All right, you're not going to know. All you have to do is toggle in the all-in pricing feature, and you know that there's no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, so after all that fluff talking about how good this team is going to be offensively, does that mean they're going to lighten the load and they won't be as elite defensively? What made Mick Cronin's arguably best team in his tenure, not the Final Four team, not the team that scored the most, the Pac-12 winning team, so dominant? Well, even the year that they made the Sweet 16, the year after the Final Four, UCLA held opponents to 64, 65 points per game, 41% from the floor. Teams made an average of just under 7 threes a game, and that's when they played a high-flying Arizona team 3 times, couple of times in that year. All right, so UCLA was solid defensively, but the year the Bruins won the Pac-12, which was just a couple of seasons ago, their last time ever winning the Pac-12, before it's reborn with the Boise's, the Colorado States, whatever it looks like in the future, UCLA, they scored 74 points a game. And they weren't the most dominant offensive team, but they were very efficient when you looked at KenPom ratings that year. But what made the Bruins so lethal was their ability to play defense. Teams only scored just 60 points per game. They averaged about 40% from the field and only made 6 threes per game. And while UCLA wasn't the best knockdown three-point shooting team in bulk, they shot just under 35% for the season, largely helped out by a very dominant season from Dave Singleton, improved numbers from Jaime Jaquez Jr., and some clutch shooting from Tiger Campbell, and then eventually some clutch threes made by Amari Bailey. So what I expect this year is a decrease in shots from Mack, probably a higher percentage for there. And what we're going to see is a lot more Dave Singleton-like looks. You're going to see that from Dominic Harris, probably off the bench, floating into the starting lineup. You see probably maybe a better stroke from Andrews than we saw from Campbell in his senior year as Andrews continues to develop in his third year at UCLA. And then a battle from the 2 spot into the 4 spot. And if Johnson can play a similar role like Clark, you're going to see the Bruins take off offensively. But that's also why I don't think this team will suffer defensively, despite Cronin's added emphasis on the portal for offensive talent. Right? Andrews, capable defender, knows how to guard the wing, and he'll be helped out by Defensive Player of the Year in the Summit League and a Summit League tournament MVP. You've got the likes of William Kyle III, who is a little undersized, but that is an athletic dude who will replace a dumb bonus athleticism, probably with less foul trouble, because remember, UCLA, as much as Adembona was a Defensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12, Freshman of the Year, he suffered from foul trouble issues. And he'll go on, I think, to have a fun, enjoyable NBA career, make some money in the NBA, which is why he bolted the Bruins instead of staying an extra year with NIL dollars. Got that guaranteed contract from the Sixers. Now, you'll look at what the Bruins have. Kyle kind of replaces that piece for piece. Might be a little bit more gifted offensively, right? Maybe not the super athleticism or the 5-star product, but he knows how to work his way around the basket and will finish with authority. And he can certainly cover the loose change on the back ends. You mix that in with Bilodeau, who will be your foul trouble guy this year. If you look at numbers from previous seasons, he was the one that comes in with foul trouble issues coming over from Oregon State, but UCLA has the depth to cover that. If they want Kyle to play the 4 for some reason, you can bring a Dye to go big and play the 5. You can bring Eric Daly Jr. to play anywhere from the 2, 3, 4, or 5 and guard those positions while still having a sweet shooting 3-point stroke and the ability to guard multiple positions. Kobe Johnson has already been alluded to by Mick Cronin as Jaylen Clark 2.0. That is high praise for a current Minnesota Timberwolf that will be shocking people if he's anywhere close to healthy this year with how dominant he is defensively as he gets comfortable in his NBA opportunity. That was the National Defensive Player of the Year, the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year. And if Johnson is anywhere near that, Mick Cronin can pick his poison, do so many things, because you've got a rim protector and an elite wing defender where the Bruins did not have that last year. And I believe I saw Johnson make a play or two in the Rico's runs as well. If he can go make a couple of steals, make some things happen, turn that into easy transition, then UCLA can fill the spots, the 2 and the 4, with whomever and lean more offensive heavy. And I think this number this year for UCLA, closer to the 76, 77 points per game, and we might see that number defensively be held down closer to 60 with a lot of talent offensively the Bruins will be facing this year. The UCLA is better. Similar rim protection, better wing defending, more depth so they don't have to rely on tired legs. And Mick Cronin might unveil what he's already talked about, a potential press, something he's been wanting to employ the best way he thinks he could play defense. And now that he's got the depth, the athleticism to do it, I don't think the defensive metrics, the numbers will suffer. It'll, one, help UCLA in a different way, throw people off as they move into a new Big Ten era. You could say it, but it's a different thing to add that into a wrinkle, whether it's a full press Virginia-like thing, because remember, Mick Cronin is a semi-Bob Huggins disciple basketball-wise, because he always talks about big Bob Huggins and what he learned from him in media press conferences. And then if you could just add that, right, beyond just the frantic 2-minute drill to come back down 7, if you could just throw that in the middle of the game, go on a 10-0 run, and completely change the game and be dominant with it in spurts or use it the whole game, that's something new this UCLA team can add with so much added talent, the depth. And if you're not going to be able to play defense, then UCLA can go find ways to put new players on defense, use the turnovers, turn those into easy offensive, possessions, efficiency ratings, whatever it may be. The Bruins can get it done. So I think UCLA with a dominant defensive player, an all Pac-12 defensive player in the wing, a conference defensive player of the year in William Kyle, guys who can defend multiple positions. You got a tall guy coming off the bench in a Diamaris, over 7 feet. You got elite defenders, tall wing players, tall players in the backcourt. Not like they're 5'10", 5'8". These are guys that are a little taller, more physical. So the Bruins could act a little bit like a proverbial bully when teams are bringing the ball up the court, whether it's in the backcourt or the front court. UCLA is going to make life a living hell, I think, for the opposition defensively, and they're going to have a fun time running around the court scoring more points because Mick Cronin teams aren't exactly the most fun to watch offensively. This year's team should look more like 2 years ago where they were good and national championship good. And I'm excited for that. Super excited. Now, are we a lot of excited for UCLA to go to LSU? I'm excited to go to Baton Rouge. UCLA a little bit banged up. Let's update you on that and what they really need to do, who they should be a little emblematic of heading into this matchup for the first time at LSU. All right, UCLA fans, have you heard about ROY? What does that even stand for? Well, it stands for Return on You. It's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. You can help shape rosters, retain talent, keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. And as you know, NIL has completely changed the game for athletes. ROY changes the NIL game for fans. All right. You can have exclusive content access. When fans contribute to a successful campaign, they receive access to exclusive content from the athlete, such as their announcement decision, behind-the-scenes footage, and other personal reflections, all of which are available only to the fans who supported the athlete. That sounds like a game changer and a way to help support these UCLA student athletes, all right? So download ROY for iOS or Android. Use the referral code LOCKEDON, and you'll be automatically entered to win a $5,000 cash sweepstakes. Join ROY.com and for more details. No purchase necessary. Void or prohibited. Again, download the app. Referral code LOCKEDON for $5,000 cash sweepstakes. Visit joinroy.com for more details. No purchase necessary. Void or prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROY. All right, here we go. We're talking football, right? This is a UCLA team where I know it says on the ticker a little bit, look into LSU football. We're going to focus more UCLA at this moment to end the show. The Bruins a bit banged up at practice. I know some of the reports have come out saying, what's the energy like? What's the injury situation like? Well, Mick Cronin hasn't exactly touched about the energies. They're just trying to get things done. But injuries, Jay Toia was absent the last couple of days. He was spotted practicing, preparing with the other injured potential players in the Wasserman Center. That's not good. He didn't leave the last game injured. To our knowledge, at least he did not leave during the middle of the game. Toia is one of the big pieces on this UCLA defensive line that stayed the extra year, stayed at UCLA as opposed to going to Texas, got the NIL he needed to finish out his career as a Bruin. At this very stage, he's gone. Keanu Williams left injured, hurt. That's another injury. Ale Kaho, a little banged up, has not been a part of practice as much. And he's got an injury-plagued history at UCLA. That's a starting linebacker that you don't want to have been banking on him to play this year, where as much as linebacker probably has the most depth this year on the UCLA defense, you still don't want to lose a starter. Absolutely not. Still no Gary Smith. Titus Mokia Atamalaba has been hurt too. So a couple of guys that have been banged up, a few starters defensively, a starting receiver outside as well. That is a lot of injury to deal with. And then Keanu Clark too. He also lived that game injured. So 5 injuries to key significant pieces for UCLA heading to the LSU game, all while though looking like they're 24-point dogs at LSU and Tiger Stadium. While it is a day game, it's going to be brutally hot, sweltering. A team with lack of depth, missing few starters. It's looking ugly for an LSU team that necessarily hasn't impressed, but the task is daunting for how UCLA has looked offensively. Now let's look at what a similar team in the SEC did, right? Kentucky won their first game, got absolutely waxed game 2. They hosted Georgia. Now, it's a key difference. They hosted Georgia. UCLA goes into one of the more daunting atmospheres in all of college football in Tiger Stadium for the first time ever. Now, Kentucky, after getting smacked, looking horrible the week before, being down quite a few players, playing the then number 1 team in the country, without even scoring a touchdown, were able to keep pace with the Bulldogs and push them to the brink of a big-time upset here in 24 just this last week. So UCLA, despite my negativity, your negativity, every UCLA pundit's negativity, maybe there's a world where it gets crazy. I know the big thing is this week, there's the small victory mantra. And what does UCLA need to do? Score a couple of touchdowns. This is an LSU defense that last year was one of the worst in the country and one of the worst in LSU's program history. That's what they're building off of. What UCLA has left over is pieces from like one of their best defenses in history. All right. So I'm not sure if LSU has exactly solved everything yet, and that they haven't. So maybe it gives you a little bit of room for optimism that the offense can score 2 touchdowns in an individual game. Not just 2 touchdowns through 2 weeks, 2 in one game. You protect Garbers, you keep some health. They can handle a Mokiao Atamalala loss if he's injured and unavailable to play. That is not said at the moment. And Deshaun Foster was mum about that, considering they don't have to release that till game day, according to Big Ten guidelines. Now for the Bruins, defensively, it's going to be a chore. Nussmeier isn't a dual threat option. LSU is down their starting tailback this year. But we saw Curtis Rourke just stand there as a pocket presence, continued accuracy, finding the open receiver again and again on 3rd and long. Your defensive line is injured, depleted, and fighting against the lack of depth and talent after losing lot 2 of the Murphy twins, losing a Carl Jones Jr. in their linebacker room. UCLA is not as deep as they are defensively, but they've been not running the team, but they've probably played more consistently than the offense has. Now, if UCLA takes a page out of Kentucky's book, the Bruins can probably play well for a few quarters, find themselves competitive for a little bit longer than they expect to be, and that would be a small victory to move forward to maybe in an opportunity later in the year they can steal victory, get to the 2, 3, 4 that they're predicted to get. As much as it looks like a chore right now, can they improve from week 3 to week 4? Kentucky nearly put off a huge upset. Can UCLA do something similar? I like to believe so. I want to hope so. I'm not going to say they're going to come out and win. I'm not saying you should expect that either. But I think there's room for optimism that this team can grow for the better this week. But with all the injuries, it can certainly get extremely, extremely ugly in a hurry, considering a lot of those are on defense and the offenses look extremely pathetic in the first couple of weeks with no signs of figuring it out. Now, if they do, then that'll be fun. LSU's defense is not elite. The crowd will be, the fans will be, the energy will be, the heat will be extreme. Pressure, probably a little bit less, except for pressure in the backfield. You keep your quarterback upright. You don't get down in the first 30 seconds of the game. Maybe UCLA can squeak out a good drive that's scripted, and they can get something good, get some good vibes. To get the small victories, you have to start winning the early plays, winning the early downs. Don't get in 3rd and long situations because the Bruins have not converted just yet in this season. And for UCLA defensively, stop LSU on a 3rd down in something. They couldn't do that against Indiana. Now let's see what changes heading into Tiger Stadium, which is one of the most daunting, vaunted atmospheres of all time in the college football realm. I'll be there, so if you're a Tiger fan, say hello. If you're a UCLA fan, come say hello. Can't wait. Get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Got more updates going through the week, keys, and everything else. Next on Locked On UCLA. Download, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.